I've never had an infant yet, but my understanding is that sometimes babies can only have formula for certain reasons. And that's still happening right now. All that's going on, and you still have the focus on the transgender agenda and a whole range of other issues that people are saying, we're getting into election high season here, folks. They've got to be kidding. And now you're seeing, Clay, people like Margaret Brennan over at CBS, some of the ultra-establishment journos are starting to say, hey, Biden team, you guys have to come up with better lies because we can't help you if you were this incompetent. Play clip 4. Here's CBS over the weekend with one of the Biden economic advisors.
Like that, we can move forward in the near future. It will not only help in lowering prices, but it will send a signal to the markets and the global economy that the United States is really deadly serious about taking on this inflation.
Hiking taxes isn't going to change the price of milk. When and how are you actually putting forward this package?
The package has been debated. It's been worked through.
It failed back when Build Back Better's version of it. So if inflation is the number one priority right now, when are you scheduling a vote to do the things you just laid out?
We're working very closely with congressional leadership, with Senate leadership on that.
They got nothing, Clay.
Yeah. I think what has happened, you mentioned Biden falling on Saturday morning at Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. I'm sure most of you have seen that video, although compared to Trump walking down a platform, I think at West Point, and the raising of the glass that turned into such a monster storyline, there hasn't been as much discussion in the left-wing media of Biden falling off his bike. But to me, that was a really significant moment, because when you have in the public's mind the idea that you are incompetent and that you are aging, they put him on a bike in the first place so they can try to counter the idea that this is an aged man who is not physically competent. So they put him on a bike. I don't know why they let him ride around on a bike. It seems dangerous in and of itself, but they dress him all up in his athletic gear, and he even had biking gloves on, even though he's going really slow. That's a super expensive bike, evidently. And the way that he fell, we have a great guy who does tremendous work analyzing sports injuries for us, Dr. David Chow, who used to be the team physician for the Chargers back in the day, and he wrote a piece at Outkick, Buck. He said that Joe Biden was very lucky he didn't break his hip. The way he fell, the angle in which that he hit the ground, and I know Biden popped back up, but there are those still image photographs of Biden incompetent, looking decrepit, laying on the ground. And I don't think you can come back from those kind of clips, because it just provides further evidence of what most Americans already believe, which is Joe Biden is too old for this job. And I think it ties in with the questions that you're seeing suddenly emerge aggressively on CBS and CNN and NBC and all these places that would otherwise typically be providing cover for this administration. They've turned on Joe Biden. And the goal, even though Biden wants to run again, is to make it impossible for him to run again in 2024. And I believe when we see this red wave or this red tsunami, it's going to be increasingly difficult for Biden to wait. They say he wants to wait till like March of 23 to announce his official run. I don't know that that's going to be possible.
And back to the narrative that they're trying to formulate of why you should think this administration is doing well, I think there is a little bit of pushback now from, as I said, the establishment journos, the Democrat apparatus propaganda pushers. And that means people that are supposed to be covering the White House asking tough questions. Think about the kinds of tough questions if you wanted to. I mean, we sit here and we're doing like, Steve Ducey, or Peter Ducey, pardon me, highlight reels from just being able to ask real questions, being willing to ask real questions in the White House. I mean, you had the Brennan asking, how is raising taxes going to help with the price of milk?
It's a fantastic question.
The obvious answer is it's not, and only an idiot would think otherwise. So why are they even talking about that? But it's like the talking points, it's mechanical for Democrats. They don't know what else to say. But Janet Yellen, to our point about how you're always supposed to be able to point to some people in the administration of the opposing party and say, at least that guy, that gal, is really competent. You would think the Treasury Secretary, in a moment like this, you'd hope that would be the case. Here is Janet Yellen, a lady who was pushing forward transitory inflation, what she said on ABC News, again, regime media, over the weekend. Play clip 5.
I expect the economy to slow. It's been growing at a very rapid rate as the labor market has recovered and we have reached full employment.
Clay, the economy contracted last quarter. How is she saying it's growing at a rapid rate?
She's lying. And I believe, and I think you're with me, Buck, I would at this point be very surprised if we're not in a recession at this exact moment. And for reminders out there, you are in a recession when you have 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP. The first quarter was down, I believe, 1.5%. And the latest forecast that they are now putting out there is that we are going to have a completely flat second quarter in terms of growth, basically right at 0%, to avoid having to predict the fact that we're going to be in an inflation and in a recession. And lots of times, you know this, and a lot of our listeners do as well, you are in a recession before the data confirms that you're in a recession. And I think that's where we are right now, because April, May, we've almost finished June. I would be surprised if we had positive GDP growth when those second quarter numbers come out. I think they are going to show that we are in inflation. I was reading the Wall Street Journal yesterday, 44% of economists. Now, look, economists are typically awful at telling you what's going to happen.
3 out of 4 are Democrats, by the way.
Yeah, but 44% of those economists now are saying that we're in a recession and or that we are going to be in a recession. So I think we're there. Almost half of economists agree. I will be surprised in the second quarter if we aren't negative again, and that would officially put us back into a recession.
And yet, with all of this going on, I think, Clay, one reason why the January 6th, this goes back to what are the priorities and the principles, in a sense, on display from the Democrat elites, the Democrat power apparatus. What really matters to them? It should be, if they were rational and if they were doing things intelligently to try to not just fix the economy, but to help themselves in the midterms, everything to figure out the economy and just say, sorry to the left-wing radical green energy base or whatever. We got to just turn things around here, folks, or else we're going to get annihilated. That would be the reasonable thing for them to do. But instead, they retreat into these ideological cocoons around issues like January 6th or pushing even more the trans agenda for either it's kids in school or now, of course, I know you're going to be talking about the new swimming regulations about transgender swimmers, which Clay will break down first. I mean, that's obviously something that's getting a lot of attention from the activist community. People can't put gas in their cars, can't afford their groceries, can't find baby formula, recession on the horizon, negative GDP growth last quarter. And does it sound like, I mean, this is really, if the Democrats had a plan, you and I would know because we would be critiquing the plan.
That's right.
This is right. That's wrong. This makes sense. That's dumb. We don't even have a plan to critique, Clay. And we all should remember why. Because the plan was Build Back Better, which is now clearly so insane because of inflation that they actually don't have a plan.
Biden is still out at Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, I believe. If you recall last week, he didn't come back on Monday until 12:30 Eastern. And then on Friday, he left at 11 a.m., so basically not really working much on Monday or Friday. And the new buzzwords in the White House, you heard us talking about, Buck and I both believe that we are in a recession based on what the data is showing us. Nearly half of economists agree with us, 44% according to the recent numbers in the Wall Street Journal. Joe Biden wants you to know, however, that is not the case, that an inflation is not inevitable, which is the new talking points. This was Biden today at the beach in Delaware.
Recession's even more likely than ever.
Not the majority of them aren't saying that. Come on, don't make things up, okay? Now you sound like a Republican politician. I'm joking. That was a joke. But all kidding aside, no, I don't think it is. I was talking to Larry Summers this morning, for example, and There's nothing inevitable about a recession.
There's nothing inevitable about a recession, Buck, is about the psychology of if people start to think a recession is happening, it makes a recession more likely, so they're desperately trying to convince people that it is not inevitable.
Yeah, and in doing so, this is like when someone's really agitated and you're saying, just calm down, just calm down. When someone's really agitated, that tends not to make them calm down, when you're shouting them to calm down and telling us all, the recession is not inevitable. Remember in old school when Will Ferrell is in the locker room toward the very end and he starts swinging the chair around saying, we got to keep our composure. We got to keep, and he's in his tighty whities and he's all burned up and stuff. That's pretty much the Biden White House at this point. They're telling us to keep our composure, Clay.
And and I know, and everyone out there who feels the 8.6% inflation knows that we're actually in a recession. I would be very surprised if these second quarter numbers don't come out. But what they are desperately hoping is that consumer spending can remain confident enough that we don't dive into a recession. So they are fighting the psychological impacts as much as anything else right now as it pertains to inflation.